Build confidence with your backup iron sights. I'm Joe Kurtenbach, and this is Lock, Stock, and Barrel. Today we're going to talk about zeroing your AR's iron sights. Now, it's a procedure that a lot of people should be familiar with, but in this age of magnified optics and red dot sights, it's just not something we do nearly as often as we should. And considering that a lot of ARs out there carry backup iron sights, they're really no good to you. They're not a true backup if they're not zeroed in. So the first thing we want to talk about is the distance to zero them at. And let me preface this whole conversation by saying this is a way. This is the way I zero my sights. There are different ways to do all these things. Make your own choices. This is how we're going to do it today. We're going to start at the range of 25 yards. Now, I picked 25 yards because, one, it's the way I learned to do it in the Army. We always use the 25-yard range to zero our rifles, even though we were going to be shooting out to 300 yards. Second, an important consideration is that most ranges, including indoor ranges, have 25 yards available. When you start getting out to 50 and 100 yards or beyond, a lot of ranges just don't have that kind of real estate. One more consideration is that when you're zeroing, you're typically going to use a pretty fine target. It's going to have a grid of squares. It's going to have a small X-ring or bullseye area. So at 25 yards, you're still able to make out those different zones. If you put that same target out to 50 or 100 without a magnified optic, it may get a little blurry. So now we've got our target at 25 yards. What's the next most important consideration? Well, you have to be able to shoot groups. What do I mean by that? When I zero, I like to shoot at least 3 shots, usually 5, in each iteration of the zeroing process. And that's really just a hedge against flyers. If you have 4 shots nice and packed together and one kind of off to the side, you know where your point of impact is, and you're able to adjust that point of impact to your point of aim. But you have to have those nice tight groups so you can make accurate adjustments. So the first step in our zeroing process is to get on paper. I like to start the target at 25 yards, but if for whatever reason you are not getting impacts on the target at that range, you need to bring it in closer. Now, bear in mind, as you bring it in closer, it's more likely you're going to impact the target, but your shots should be low. If you are high at, say, 10 or 15 yards, when you push that target out to 25 yards, you may be even higher and back off the paper again. So make sure that whatever you're doing, if you can get your windage alignment correct, and then keep the impacts a little bit low beneath the target area, you're going to be good when you push it out to 25. A tool that can be very handy here is a laser bore sighter. Laser light makes a great one, and you can just insert this into the front of your barrel, and it gives you a beam, so you can generally align your sights to the beam, making sure that you're going to be in the vicinity when you start sending actual rounds downrange. So now we're on paper, we're shooting groups, and our target is at 25 yards. It's time to start making our adjustments. Now, on a typical AR setup, using either the A2 or flip-up iron sights, typically the front sight is going to control your elevation. It's going to be a screw-type post that you can raise up or lower down to adjust your elevation. And the rear sight is going to be adjustable for windage. When zeroing at 25, you have to be sure to offset your adjustments for the distance. So for example, your rear sight may be windage adjustable 1/4 MOA per click. That means that at 100 yards, 1 click will change the point of impact by about 1/4 inch. But when you're shooting at 100 yards, that bullet has that whole 100 yards to travel and to make that adjustment in flight. At 25 yards, much closer, the adjustments are going to be less noticeable. So, for example, that 1/4 MOA change, the 4 clicks to move a shot an inch at 100 yards, it's actually going to be 16 clicks at 25 yards to make that same 1-inch adjustment. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Gerber's excellent AR multi-tools. I like to have one with me when I'm zeroing an AR, especially for that front sight, because those posts can be tricky, and I see a lot of guys jamming a lot of different instruments down into the detent, and it can really mar up or even bend that front sight. So go ahead, get yourself a proper AR front sight tool and get the job done right. As we're making our adjustments, we have a couple options on how to finalize our zero. In the military, I was taught to get a perfect 25-yard zero and then basically hold for elevation as the targets range from 25 to 300 yards. It's a good option. It does require you to remember that The nearer in targets, you're going to have to hold a little bit low because the bullet's still rising. And on the further targets, you're going to have to hold a little bit high because the bullet's coming down. So it's kind of it's not as precise as other methods might be, but in military use for hitting man-sized targets out to 300 yards, it's definitely effective. Now, my preferred method of finalizing the zero is actually to get ballistic data on the load and firearm I'm using, and to find out where, at 25 yards, my impacts need to be in order to have a 100 or 200 yard zero. So let me explain that. For zeroing today, I'm using 62 grain Aguila 5.56 ammunition. I know that at the muzzle, this ammo is coming out at around 3150 feet per second. So I plug that into a ballistic calculator, and for a 100 yard zero, I know I want my impacts to be 1.5 inches low, or for a 200 yard zero, I want my impacts to be 1.3 inches low. So by making sure that I have that precise offset, that I'm hitting low at 1.5 inches, I know I've just achieved a precise 100 yard zero. Now, obviously, you're going to want to double check these at the ranges, and especially if you're doing any kind of precision work or hunting, where shot placement is totally crucial, far more crucial than that man-sized silhouette that the military trains us on. You really want to make sure that you're shooting those distances if you have the opportunity. So there you have it. As I said before, this is a way to zero your AR's backup iron sights at 25 yards. To stay up to date on all things guns, gear, and firearm related, stay tuned at AmericanRifleman.org.